How's it going, everyone? James Lynch here, along with my co-host JHK. This is the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast, where we take an upcoming look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we're going to be looking at the Sean Strickland and Uriah Hall main event, which is coming up very shortly here. So we're going to dive into that. But before we get into that, want to make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It's an easy way to support the channel. If you guys have any questions, just post them in the chat. We will get to them as soon as we're done the breakdown. And as always, make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. It's the best app out there. You can get your picks in. I still got to do my UFC 264 picks. I'll do that after the show, but we'll definitely get our underdog picks in today here as well. John, how's it going, man? How's everything?
Good, man. Everything is rolling really good. I'm about to get a vaccine, so when the world opens up, I could travel, man, and that's what I'm excited about.
Have you not had a vaccine yet, or
no? I haven't had it yet.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I guess I'm waiting to get my second one, and that's going to be hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens, but we're not a political show. We're a fight show. Let's get right into it here. UFC Fight Night, Hall versus Strickland. I finally got the dates up here, July 31st. So a week after Sandhagen and Dillashaw, we got this main event. I forgot this fight was actually scheduled to be taking place in September, and they ended up moving it back. August. They ended up moving it back a month. So not sure the reason for that, but like we always do, we're going to start here with how we came to this fight. And this is kind of an interesting matchup. Maybe not the flashiest main event we've seen in the last little bit here, but I like the fight because it's a case of two sort of fighters in different situations here. You've got Sean Strickland, who, in my opinion, has really found a new life in a new weight class at 185. He hasn't lost since moving up. And you've got Uriah Hall, who's had just a weird career. I think that's a fair thing to say here, right? With Uriah Hall, where, he's got some really good wins. He's got some really bad losses as well. Some fights where, he didn't perform very well. And then, of course, the last fight, he had that really weird, fight against Chris Weidman, where Weidman breaks his leg in the first exchange. Shouldn't laugh about that, but you get what I'm saying. It just sort of adds to Uriah Hall's very bizarre career overall. But I like the matchmaking here. Rankings wise, it makes sense. And just in terms of implications, I think it makes a lot of sense here. So just your thoughts first, John, on the matchup itself between Hall and Strickland.
I was kind of confused because I expected Uriah Hall, after he won that fight against Weidman. I know it ended kind of weird, but it's still a win on the record. I felt like he should have fought somebody higher up in the rankings, but he didn't. And Strickland came in and took this main event. I'm thinking the UFC has a lot of stock into Strickland, and that's why they put this fight together.
I think so too, and I think it's I think it's also trying to figure out where Hall fits, because I think that Weidman fight was going to be a fight where you sort of determine where does he fit in this division. He beat Anderson Silva, great. Silva, I think we can agree, not exactly, although he did win a boxing fight recently, but in the UFC anyways, Anderson Silva was not a contender anymore. So it's like, where does Uriah Hall fit in that situation? He finished Silva, which is great, but can he beat these bigger names, right? I think the last contender he's had, at least recently, I want to say, was Paulo Costa, and he failed that test. I mean, to be completely honest here. So, can he get back to that level that he was once at? And Hall's not getting any younger. He's 36. In the middleweight division, that's a little bit older than some of the other fighters that are in that division. So I think the matchmaking's good. Just looking at the rankings here, if you look at sort of where they're placed right now, Uriah Hall is ranked number 8, Sean Strickland ranked number 11. So, I mean, Strickland's ranked behind Edmund Shabazian, which I think is a little interesting, but again, it just goes to show the rankings are a little bit different there, but I don't have a problem with it. I think this is a really, really, really good fight for the division, and it's going to be awesome to watch when it comes up here on the 31st. Let's start actually first with Uriah Hall, because he's sort of the more well-known fighter here. I mentioned that they're 36 years old, 6 feet tall, with a 79.5 reach advantage. He's actually, pretty decently sized middleweight. I remember there was some talk of him going to light heavyweight when a couple of years ago he had a really bad weight cut, but that never happened. He ended up staying at middleweight. But I got to talk about the bizarre record here. So, of course, Uriah is probably unfamously, or I should say famously known, but not for the right reasons, of when Dana White said he was going to be the next Anderson Silva. Do you remember this? He did the spinning back fist on Adam Sella, I can't remember his name, and finished him, and everyone was hyped about this guy. And then what does he do? He loses in the finale to Calvin Gastelum, which, interestingly enough, they're very good friends now. And it was kind of interesting that Gastelum ended up winning that fight. The following fight after that, do you remember what happened? He fought John Howard. John Howard was brought back to the UFC. Fight he wasn't supposed to win. Hall loses that fight as well. So, like I said, it's been a bit of an up and down career for him. He also lost a split decision to Rafael Natal. That was a fight I think could have gone either way. But here's the fight, and John, this is near and dear to my heart. The fight against Gegard Mousasi, right? He finishes Gegard. I mean, that's the best win of his career, I think, hands down. No one's finished Gegard like that before. And for him to do it, in the second round, super impressive. Little side story on that fight. I got married on the day that they fought. And Nick Baldwin, who I'll never forgive him for this, for some reason tagged me on Twitter, even though I was trying to avoid spoilers. It was one of those notifications that popped up on my phone. And Nick wrote something like, oh man, James is going to be so pissed. So luckily it didn't ruin my wedding day, but I was very upset when I found out that Gegard had lost that fight. Anyways, he gets this big win. He gets this big opportunity. He fights Robert Whittaker next. He loses that fight. To his credit, he went the distance with Whittaker. Not everyone can live to see the judges' scorecards when you fight Robert Whittaker. We know what happened after that. 3 straight losses, including the rematch against Mousasi. Bounced back against Jotko in a fight I actually thought he was losing. Ended up coming back in that one. And then lost to Costa, and now he's on a 4-fight win streak. The one difference with Hall that we've seen over the last couple of years is it seems like he's finally in a good camp for himself. You know, he's been everywhere, right? He's been training in California. I know he trained at the Extreme Couture for a while as well. Now he's at Fortis. You know how highly I think of Fortis and the job Saif Saud does over at that camp. He runs a tight ship. And I think it's the best camp for him, not only with the training partners he gets to work with, but also the fact that Saif's a no-nonsense guy. He's not going to let you get away with anything. And I think with Uriah, he needs that discipline in a camp. So I think Uriah's look really good. I was actually at the fight he had against Antonio Carlos Jr., which I know was a split, but I thought he clearly won the fight. He looked good in that one. The Bavon Lewis fight, that was another comeback fight. You remember Lewis was winning that, and he ended up finishing. So to his credit, 4-fight win streak. The question is, where can Hall go? Can he be a title challenger? This is definitely one step in that right direction, facing Sean Strickland. Just your thoughts on Uriah Hall and what he brings to the table here in this fight.
I think Uriah Hall, you know, he started off on the Ultimate Fighter season 17, all that hype, Anderson Silva, the next generation, and then he goes off and loses his first 2 fights in the UFC. I think after that, he was kind of lost because I feel like he started off at Tiger Showman and then he just started traveling around. He was in Vegas, he was here, he was there. You know, he always had a different corner. And then eventually he ended up at Fortis. And when you look at some of the fights that he had, like you said, the Jocko fight, he was losing and he came back and won in the second round. And if you look at the Paulo Costa fight, that was a straight up brawl, right? Those guys were brawling. Like even, you know, Uriah Hall knocked him down before he got knocked out in the second round. If you go back and watch it again. And also in the first round, Paulo Costa hit him in the nuts twice, once with a kick and once with a punch. And I feel like that had an effect on a fight. I feel like whenever a fighter gets kicked or punched in the nuts, it has an effect on them. So if he didn't get kicked or punched in the nuts, I don't know. That fight could have went a little bit different. The Bavon Lewis fight after that, he was losing that fight for 2 rounds and he came back and got the knockout in that one. And I think after that, that's when he went to Fortis and he changed. And I feel like the Carlos, Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, if you watch that fight, it was a split decision win, but it showed us a lot about Uriah Hall. He was in like dangerous positions on the ground. He defended well against Carlos Jr. And Carlos Jr. is a dangerous dude on the ground, right? If he can't submit you, it's going to be hard for anybody else to submit you in that division, right? And he came back, won that fight. I think he was busting him up with the jab. He was working really well. And then after that, he had a long period where it was like he couldn't fight, right? He had the cancellation, the Souza fight. He got coronavirus, and after that, he was supposed to fight Romero. Romero got injured, and then he finally got the Anderson Silva fight. The Silva fight, that was a pivotal fight for him. The reason why, I think he got over the mental barriers. You know, the mental, like the demons that he had inside of him, you know what I mean? Because he had a lot of pressure on him to become the next Anderson Silva. He went in there actually against Anderson Silva and kind of overcame that with, you know, first 2 rounds was kind of back and forth. But then when he got into his groove, you know, he knocked down, I think, Silva at the end of the 3rd and almost finished him. And then he finished him in the 4th, right? With some clean shots. And then the Weidman fight, even that one is like a mental thing too, right? He goes in there, the first kick of the fight, Weidman breaks his leg. I don't know where he's at right now, but I feel like he is in a good place. You know what I mean? Like I can't get into his mind, but I think he overcame all the mental barriers. And if you look at his record, man, he's faced the best of the best, man. He never, you know, like kind of, swayed away from the top competition. And, you know, some guys could be, you know, guilty of that throughout their career.
Now, let's talk about Sean Strickland. 30 years old, so a little bit younger there than Uriah Hall. He's 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. Trains at a Team Quest, but I know he does some training in California and in Vegas as well. If you've never watched a Sean Strickland interview, John, I don't know if you've had the chance to speak to him or not. He is crazy. I mean, there's no other way to put it. And I mean that in a good way. He's definitely a different guy when it comes to, you know, his personality and everything else. And yeah, it's whatever it is, it's working for him. He's looked great. So Sean Strickland, I mentioned 30 years old, 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. So he's actually going to have, he's about almost the same height as Uriah Hall, but Uriah Hall with a slight reach advantage in this fight, a former welterweight. But you look at his run. I mean, he was before signing with the UFC, he was 12-0. Came in, won his first 2 fights, lost to Santiago Ponzinibbio back in 2015, but that was when Ponzinibbio was really on a tear at that point. So not a bad loss to have, and that was a decision loss as well. Ended up racking 3 straight wins after that, including a big win over Tom Breeze. And then he fought Kamaru Usman and lost. But again, we're talking about the welterweight champion here. Not a bad loss to have. Beat Court McGee, then lost to Zaleski. That was a fight where I think he would have wanted that one back. That was I think a winnable fight for him. He didn't get it done. He got finished in the first round, maybe a little reckless in that one. And then he went out there and after that and defeated Nordine Taleb after that. And then we know the story, what happened there. He got in that really bad motorcycle accident. Doctors saying he might not get to resume his career. He takes that whole experience, talk about coming back from adversity, and he looks even better. He's like, you know what? I shouldn't be cutting a welterweight. I should be going to middleweight now. And he had a great debut against Jack Marshman. The fight after that, though, is the fight that I think really put the division on notice, and that was the Brendan Allen fight. I've been following Brendan for a long time, since back before he was even in LFA. I think is maybe his 4th pro fight. And Brendan's a very good fighter. I think maybe one sort of weakness with him is sometimes he gets a little bit in his head, but he destroyed Brendan Allen in that fight. Like, I've seen Brendan Allen lose fights. He lost to Trevin Giles, lost to Eric Anders, lost to Anthony Hernandez, but he's never been beaten that badly by Sean by anyone in the cage before, like Sean Strickland did. So that was a huge win for him. I know, to be fair, Brendan, I don't think he was planning to fight. He was supposed to fight Ian Heinisch, remember? And then there was a whole issue with Heinisch getting COVID. And then Allen's like, I'm taking the rest of the year off. And then all of a sudden he's fighting Strickland. So I don't know what happened there, but it was Sean Strickland going out there and finishing him. And then his last fight, he gets a really good win over Christos Jacko. So Strickland has really found new life in this weight class, 3 straight wins. And that's why he's getting this opportunity against Uriah Hall. And like I said, minus the Zaleski loss, he's only lost to really good guys. So your thoughts on Sean Strickland and what he brings to the table in this fight?
What's unique about Strickland is he's been in the UFC almost just as long as Uriah Hall, and he's just kind of like quietly, shipped through the welterweight division. Every time he got a big opportunity, he failed. If you look at it, like you said, when he fought, who was the first guy? Ponzinibbio failed that, test. Usman failed that test. Zaleski failed that test. Those are guys that are out there like running through the division at that time, right? But then he comes back and he beats Nordine Taleb. I feel like that was a big win, man, because Nordine, he's a tough guy to put away. And he's it's a tough guy to figure out, too. And what did Sean Strickland do? He went in there and figured him out and finished him in the second round, ground and pound. The Jack Marshman fight, it didn't really tell us much about him, to be honest with you, because where do you rate Jack Marshman if you rate him in that middleweight division?
He's a gatekeeper. I mean, let's get real here. He's not even, I don't even think he's on the UFC roster anymore. He might still be there, but he's a guy that they give you to see where you belong, right? So.
Exactly. And I don't even think he's a gatekeeper. I think he's like lower than a gatekeeper. I'm not trying to, diss Marshman, but that's just the truth if you stack him against. But then, like you said, the Brendan Allen fight, that fight was great because he lured Brendan Allen into a brawl, basically, into a striking match. And he was battering Brendan Allen. Brendan Allen is usually a guy, he goes in there, he's tactical, he takes guys to the ground, and he slices through them, right, on the ground. He couldn't do that. He didn't even try to do that against Strickland, and Strickland took advantage of that, finished him in the second round with a beautiful knockout. In the Jocko fight, he kind of did the same thing to Jocko, right? He's just that Jocko didn't go away. You know what I mean? He kind of stood there and banged with Strickland. Strickland, he has this style, man, that I think fans like. And I think that's what the UFC likes about him. He goes forward and he just throws hard and he's very accurate, right? And what's unique about him is he doesn't even kick really. He doesn't really kick the legs. He doesn't really kick. He throws a knee sometimes, but that's about it. He's a straight boxer. I remember in his last fight, Teddy Atlas, if you watch his fight, Teddy Atlas tweets out that Strickland is like a pure like boxer MMA fighter, and he goes straight and he doesn't waste any energy. And I feel like that's a good analysis of Sean Strickland, and that's why they put him against Uriah Hall, because Uriah Hall, striker, and he's not going to try to wrestle him.
One more thing on Strickland wanted to mention. Like I mentioned, he did split time between, I think, Team Quest out in California with Dominic Reyes and Sam Alvey. Although, actually, I heard Reyes is switching camps. I don't know if you heard about that, but apparently Reyes is moving to Vegas. Nonetheless, he's training over there with those guys, and then he's at Syndicate as well. And I saw him training with Aaron Jeffrey, who I know is over there, training with Chris Curtis. There's a lot of other, fighters you get to train with. So that seems to be working for him, and I think that makes a lot of sense here. Do we have odds on this fight? I noticed the producer, Michael, I don't know if you had it up yet, but I noticed on the books they don't actually have it yet. But if I had to guess, I would say Uriah Hall is going to be the favorite in this fight, just because of the fact that he's been around a little bit longer and, fought higher caliber competition, if I had to take a guess. So with all that said, John, who are you picking?
Oh, actually, Uriah Hall is the underdog. The odds are on the screen, and he's the
Gotcha.
underdog, and I'm taking the underdog in this fight. The reason why I'm taking the underdog in this fight, because I feel like this fight is tailor-made for Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall is a counter striker, and he's a great striker, and he has so many tools, and he has knockout power, right? Sean Strickland is going to end up running into something. And that's what's going to happen in this fight. That's what I believe. I think Sean's going to go. He's going to press forward. He thinks he's going to be able to take the shots that Uriah Hall throws at him, but he's going to just try to eat one too many. And I think he's going to get knocked out in this fight. I don't know if it's going to happen in the first round or the second round or the third round, but he's going to get knocked out. I think these guys are going to go blow for blow. And I think Uriah Hall, he learned from the Paulo Costa fight. He learned from those brawls that he has to be a little bit more calculated. And I think we're seeing the best Uriah Hall we've ever seen right now, especially under the tutelage of Saif Saud in Fortis. He's got his mental game at, it's top notch now. I think he goes in there calculated and like a sniper takes out Sean Strickland.
This is a tough one for me. This is, like the odds indicate, about a 50-50 fight for me, because I definitely side with you on the in terms of the style matchup, and also with the fact that Hall's fought way better competition, but Hall's also been finished a lot. Hall's also taken a lot of damage, and Hall is also 36 years old, which has got to be something that at some point this guy's going to slow down. Is this the fight? I mean, that's the problem with the Weidman fight. We didn't learn anything from that fight, and that was the first step up he's had since the Paulo Costa fight. With Strickland, it could be another thing where maybe he's just beating guys he should be beating. Maybe he's not at that contender spot yet. But with the fact that this guy's a little bit younger, with the fact he's got all this momentum, right? And he's been very active since coming back from the accident. He fought in October, then November, then in May. So this guy's been really, and we talked about Hall, a lot of the fight cancellations, right? Like he had the last fight against Silva in October of last year, and then fought Weidman. But prior to that, he missed most of 2020, and even 2019, he only fought just the one time. So Strickland's been a lot more active. The other thing with Strickland as well is that this is a guy that has yet to be finished in that weight class. He was finished at welterweight, but that's also, you got to wonder if the cut played a role in that, with him, losing and getting finished in the first round by Zaleski. Like I said, he fights Zaleski 9 times out of 10. I think he wins that fight. I'm going with the odds here. I'm going with Sean Strickland. However, I will caution people, kind of like when we talked about Makhachev and Thiago Moises. I think this is a fight you got to be careful about, because I think Hall, this could be a fight where he surprises people. But the thing that I just know with Hall is that he's so inconsistent, right? I know he's at this new camp now. I know everything looks on paper like everything should be good, but we just seen so many fights where he's supposed to do well and he doesn't, and he gets finished in early, like the Paulo Costa fight, or he gets knocked out. Like Derek Brunson does not knock out a lot of people in the first round, at least not recently, and he was finished. I know that fight was in 2016, but still, Derek Brunson knocking him out in the first round, that's not a good look, right? So you just got to wonder about that as well, and just where Hall's at this point. So I'm going to take Sean Strickland, the favorite. But this is one where I'd be very careful. With it being 5 rounds, I almost lean towards the fight doesn't go the distance prop. If you want to be really safe here, I think that might be something to take a look at, or maybe even, I don't know what the under's at, but or maybe even, well, it depends what the under is. If the under is like under 4.5, then maybe I'd go with that. But if it's like under 1.5, probably not. You're probably not going to see an early finish in this one. I would think if there is a finish, it's going to be a little bit later. But with it being 5 rounds, I think that does favor the younger guy in Sean Strickland, who we know is just an absolute freak in the gym. So I'm going to go with Sean Strickland, but like I said, not 100% confident on the pick, just because it is a 50-50 fight, like the odds indicate.
I think that if this fight was a 3-round fight, I would take the bet that it goes to the judges. But since it is a 5-round fight, I don't think it's going to go 25 minutes. These guys, they throw too hard and they're too aggressive. I think someone's going to get put out in this fight if anything happens.
Let's get to some questions. We got our man. I got to give a big shout out to our man, J Spec Driver 702. Always tunes into the show every single time. And he says, "Good morning, gentlemen." It is morning for us over here in North America. But we'll get to his first question. He says, "What do you guys think about the UFC signing the branding deal with crypto company and basically bringing back ads to clothing that they stripped from fighters' pockets?" Well, to be fair, the reason I know what the Reebok deal, the reason they did the no sponsors was because of the way the Reebok deal worked. I think with Venom, they're not as big of a company. I think they can get away with that a little bit more, but yeah, it's atrocious. Like, why are the fighters not getting a cut of this? That was the first thing I thought of when I saw the deal. It's like, like, I get they got a performance institute and I get they got all these other things, but these fighters have got to get paid a little bit more. Like, I know some, people made a big fuss of the whole Sarah Alpar thing, how she wants to start a GoFundMe, but you shouldn't have to work another job. Like, this isn't the CFL, right? Like, you shouldn't there's no off season. These fighters have to fight year round. There should be some better compensation for stuff like this. And this is why the fighters need a union and they need rights, and because the UFC can essentially do whatever they want. And their whole thing is, well, you don't like it, go somewhere else. Well, some fighters have, and they're making more money. So it's just an unfortunate part of the sport, because you do want to see, like, this is what I don't get about fans who are like, oh, well, I work 60 hours a week, so I should be paid. The thing is, like, don't you want to watch the fighters compete at their best? And they're going to compete at their best if they're getting paid adequately. These fighters aren't driving out in Mercedes and stuff, unless you're Conor or GSP. You're not going to make that type of money. So they just want to have enough so they can pay their mortgage. They can eat good food in camp. They don't have to eat at McDonald's, right? They can actually have stuff that's a little bit more expensive that's actually good for you. And that's all they're asking for. So yeah, when I saw the deal, and I know they're like, oh, well, they can, they could be brand ambassadors. Well, of course it's going to go to the more popular fighters who already make more money than the lower tier fighters anyway. So to me, it's bad. I mean, it's good. I guess UFC is expanding, but it's bad for the fighters. That's my thoughts on it.
It's completely just slap in the face for the fighters, man. And then they put out the figures. What was it? $175 million over 5 years. And then we're like, oh yeah, we're going to allow the fighters to get separate sponsorships for. It's like, okay, it's basically Monster Energy drink, but with the crypto site, right? It's like, who cares, man? The uniforms are just going to look like soccer uniforms, and then they're not going to get paid for it. Why don't, there's always the suggestion of, why don't they just allow a couple spots on the shorts or on the shirt to get their own sponsors, man? It will help every fighter so much. And, the UFC is going to get a cut of that anyways, right? So why don't they do that? Most likely the reason why is these big sponsorship companies they probably ban, other sponsors from coming on to the clothing brand. Maybe Venom, it's in their deal. Who knows, man? But they need to stop, man. It's like you said, Sarah Alpar, she has to do a GoFundMe, and this becomes a huge story with Jake Paul donating and Triller donating. And it's like, it kind of makes the UFC look completely like assholes. I'm telling you, it makes the UFC look like assholes. Like, Sarah Alpar has to get donations to do her fight camp. Like, what the hell is going on? This is 2021. Like, UFC is a multi-billion-dollar company with like hundreds of $1 million sponsorship deals, and these fighters are talking about, I need a GoFundMe, man. Like, now it's like every fighter should have a GoFundMe. I'm serious. Like, every fighter should make a GoFundMe or make a Vimeo? Is that what it's called? Where you can donate money? Yeah.
We don't have that in Canada.
Yeah. Actually. All these fans are talking shit about fighters. They're starting their OnlyFans. It's like, why are you talking shit about that? Like, you've seen it, Sarah Alpar.
Those fans are probably buying it anyways, right?
Exactly.
They're all freaks at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to. By the way, Jake Paul being an advocate for fighter pay was not on my bingo card in 2021, by the way. So that
and I love him for it, man. Keep doing it.
Yeah, not to go too much more on this, but we're seeing this in other sports. Like, I follow the NHL quite closely. There's talk of them putting ads on the jerseys because they lost a lot of revenue with the pandemic coming in. And there was like a big argument because like the Vancouver Canucks got COVID. Their whole team was ravished. They were well out of the playoff picture, and they still had to play the games because they had to fulfill the sponsorship obligations from the companies that pay the NHL. So there was like a huge uproar about that. But getting sponsors on the on the jerseys and stuff would sort of alleviate that. So this is not uncommon in other sports. The NBA is going that direction as well. So for people to say that, oh, you can't have sponsors on there because it would look like unprofessional, well, they do it in every other sport, including soccer and so many others. So this whole thing can be solved if they say, hey, you can have a sponsor too. It can be displayed on your. Remember they used to have the banner when you're in the cage. You should do that too. Even that, like, I don't think that's a big deal. So anyways, we can do a whole podcast on that. Maybe I'll discuss it today on the parting shot with Adam and I. We're doing that. You Eastern. All right. Jose Flores saying, why is UFC prohibited fighters to wear sponsors, but the octagon canvas looks like out of a NASCAR race? They're greedy. There's no other way to put it.
Man.
Scrooge McDuck, man. Scrooge McDuck.
The rich get richer and the poor stay poor, right? That's what
exactly. Is the guy that is fighting Gerald Meerschaert the best unranked middleweight? It's that guy who trains with we watched this fight last time. What's his name? Let me look up Gerald Meerschaert's opponent here. I always forget this guy's name, but I know exactly who it is. It's Muradov, right? The guy who's part of Mayweather's team. That beat Andrew Sanchez.
Oh,
Remember we watched that fight at UFC 257.
that's
Yeah,
right.
he's very good. I mean, to finish an Andrew Sanchez, who's a very durable guy in that division, very impressive. He's up there. I think it's going to be a tough fight for Gerald, but we'll see. Gerald just became a dad. Maybe Dad Mershart will be a thing. So
That's a tough matchup, man.
Yeah.
The guy's pretty good.
Gotcha. By the way, producer Michael just made a note, but I'll mention it a little bit later as well. Lucas in the chat, he says, what do you see is next for Yuri Prohaska, title fight against Hyon, or number one contender fight? So here's an interesting thing. I mentioned this, I think, before on the show. I reached out to Rakic's management, Alexander Rakic's management, I want to say almost a month ago now. And I was like, just want to get an interview, just get his thoughts. And I forget what fight it was I was going to get him to get his thoughts on. And he's like, oh, we're in negotiations for a fight. Now, who's Rakic going to fight at this point? Everyone's booked up, right? Ankalaev supposedly fighting Volkan Ozdemir. You've got, Ryan Spann and Anthony Smith. Dominic Reyes is out there. But I think they're trying to do, if I had to guess, Rakic and Yuri. Even though I think Yuri's done enough to earn himself a title shot, but if you want to do that fight, not a big deal. And Yuri, we haven't heard any fight news on him. I think that's what they're leaning towards, especially with the fact we don't even have a date yet for Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira, which is crazy. So I think that's likely what's going to happen. But I can't see Yuri fighting anyone else. Like, who else would he fight?
Nobody. He has to wait for the title. I think Yuri's set on that too. I think you did an interview with him, and he was saying that right in the interview that he's only going to fight for the title next. He's going to wait for whoever wins the fight with Glover.
He said he'd be open to one more fight, but we'll see. I mean, again, I don't think he needs to, but if he has to, he says he'd be open to fighting someone like Rakic. So
I don't know. He's like, if you look at it, Rakic, he could fight Dominic Reyes, right? He hasn't fought him, but the thing is, Dominic Reyes, I think he just had surgery. And he's recovering.
Reyes is going to be back for a while, I don't think, because he's switching camps from what Curtis Blades was telling me, and then he's lost 3 in a row. He needs like a bounce back fight, and Rakic is not that guy. Anthony Smith tried that when he thought, I'll have a bounce back after Glover, and then he got the brakes beaten off of him from Rakic. So I don't know. I think there's maybe a few names you could do, but even Rakic, like, to me, Thiago Santos is ahead of Reyes at this point, and so he just beat him. So I don't think that makes sense either. But we'll keep an eye on that. Antoine, good morning, guys. Just wanted to know how you guys feel about Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett, his debut is supposed to be in September. I get asked about this guy all the time, and they don't have an opponent for him yet, do they? Or have they?
No, they don't.
He's going to get, like, I was just saying this the other day, and I mean, no disrespect when I mention this, but I think he's going to get like a Steven Peterson, like someone who's, a veteran that maybe he could beat, but it's really sort of a test. Like, whoever Chase Hooper's fought is basically who I think Pimblett's going to fight, because they're going to put kid gloves on him early on, because he's a big name for them in the UK market. He's had some struggles. It hasn't been a flawless run to the UFC. I mean, I remember years ago hearing about how he's going to get signed, and then he lost a couple key fights. So expect him to fight someone that's, a veteran that's a winnable fight. Peter Barrett's not in the UFC anymore, but that's you sort of get where I'm going with this. Maybe David Tamer comes back, or not David, Daniel Tamer, the brother. So we'll see.
When you look at Pimblett, he lost to Soren Bach. Soren Bach, he fights for Bellator now. He's doing pretty good over there, actually. And he lost to Nad Narimani, who did fight for the UFC. I don't know if he's still signed, but not a very good run with the promotion. He does have a win over Julian Erosa back in 2016, but that's 2016. That's a whole.
And that was a close fight, if I remember. I think that could have gone either way.
Maybe they should put him against Julian Erosa. Julian Erosa's coming off a loss.
There you go. The rematch that no one
knows about.
Jose Flores, have you seen Dana's interview with John Morgan? I saw the clip where he basically told the fans to, like, quit whining about the Gane and Lewis fight. But, like, the thing is, Francis we already went through this, I think, last week, but I mean, Francis just won the title in March. Like, we're a couple months removed, and now you're doing an interim fight. It just looks silly when you've had other situations where fighters have been out for a long time. Like, Nunes hasn't defended or title. Like, there's so many fights where this has been the case where, there's been long layoffs, and now you're waiting a couple months because I don't know the whole story there. So he didn't come across very good in that, but he rarely does in a lot of interviews. So no, I can't sort of talk to that because I didn't watch the full interview. But I know him and Oscar from MacLife got interviews with Dana, I guess, because they are both in Vegas. He said Leon should stay active since nothing is a guarantee in the sport, but Colby hasn't fought since last September. Thoughts? I mean, of course, like, it's no different than, and I always bring up this quote, Usman telling Colby, you got to show me more, when he fought Masvidal, who just lost to Usman. So it's like that quote doesn't really hold a lot of water when you're fighting a guy who, and granted, I know Masvidal took it on short notice or whatever, but I don't know what's going to happen. I thought, it looked like at one point, I mean, Dana yesterday again said, Usman and Covington's happening. We're just figuring out a date. It's like, well, When's this going to happen? And then what's up with this whole, like, did you see Ali's interview with TMZ? I think I don't know if I sent it to you. I sent it to someone else. And Ali's now saying that at least Nate Diaz showed us something. Nate Diaz lost his last 2 fights, Ali. He should not be fighting Kamaru Usman. And I talked about this, I think, it was last week on the show. That would be the worst title shot in UFC history given out is Nate Diaz if he gets it off 2 straight losses. That's a huge slap in the face to guys like Burns and Wonderboy were fighting this week. Like, I'd rather see Burns get a rematch against Usman this year than see Nate Diaz fight for the title. That's how adamant I am about not wanting to see Nate Diaz fight. He's a fan favorite, but let's get real here. He's not a title contender as well. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't even get you to get so animated.
I don't even think Covington should be fighting for the title. I'm going to tell you that right now. If you look at Covington, right, his last win was what? Tyron Woodley, right? Yep. Tyron Woodley's not even with the promotion anymore.
Right.
And if you look at the top 15, Covington hasn't beaten any of those guys. None of them.
But that's also because RDA dropped down, right? He did win the interim title. He's also an interim title holder, John. You can't ignore that either. Like, I get what you're saying. Colby's the Colby argument's a little bit. And granted, you know where I'm coming from because I like.
You know why that argument is there is because he's been sitting out for so long that it just the division has passed him up, basically. Everybody else is fighting, and he's just sitting there trying to hold his.
He's not going to pass him up if he gets his title shot, though. That's the thing. If he plays his card,
I think the UFC they're getting tired of him.
If they are, then but you got to watch this interview because Dana says in the interview they're trying to work on, like, he mentions Colby, and then we're hearing from it's Usman's manager who doesn't want Colby to fight because he doesn't like him. And everything else. That's what the holdup is, in my opinion. But here's the other argument with Colby. He's a former interim champ. That should hold a bit of weight there. 2, he already took fights when he shouldn't have had to. When he fought Lawler, for example, remember when they didn't give him the immediate title shot, when in the end ended up having to fight Lawler. So he's done favors for the promotion. The other thing is he's had the closest fight with Usman out of anyone, at least recently. I guess, obviously he was finished in the 5th round, but it was a close fight going into that 5th round. So that's where he also holds a bit of weight as well. I mean, Usman finished Burns earlier, and he obviously, I know Woodley went the distance, but that was obviously the title win, so to speak. So I don't know. I'm a little bit on the fence with Colby. I'd like to see Colby fight more too. I wouldn't mind Colby fighting Leon Edwards. I think that's fine as well, but I just think he's looking at the optics of it. And it's like, why would I take that fight? What am I going to gain out of that when I could potentially sit on the sidelines and get a shot there as well? So
he's coming up on 1 year this September that he hasn't fought, right? 1 year is a long time, man. The division is moving along. You got Luque fighting Chiesa, man, like Thompson is fighting Burns. I think if Thompson wins that fight against Burns, he's gonna leapfrog all of those guys because Usman hasn't fought him, right? And that's a fresh matchup, and it's actually a very intriguing matchup. So I think that's what they're waiting for. I think they're waiting for this weekend to pass, and then they'll decide. And also, I think the UFC is using Edwards against Covington and Covington against Edwards in negotiations.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's happening right now, and it's stalling out. And they're going to wait for Thompson to get into the mix. And if he does get into the mix, and Thompson, he just wants to fight for the title, man. It's not like about money to him, really. He probably has enough money. He's a very successful businessman. I think he just wants a crack at that belt, and he's gonna take the fight wherever. So it's very interesting because Thompson just sits back, and all these other guys are just like chatting back and forth on social media, talking shit to each other, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight at the next pay-per-view, and if I win, I'll probably get the title shot," which is perfect for him, man. I want to see him fight Usman. Don't you?
I want to see Wonderboy fight Usman as well, but I think the only way he does that is if he finishes Gilbert Burns. And the stupidest thing about this fight on Saturday, and I'll say, yes, I'm using the word stupidest, which isn't a word, but it's not 5 rounds. Like, how? Like, think about this for just 2 seconds. Leon Edwards fights Nate Diaz, and that's a 3-round fight. Leon Edwards wins 30-27. We're not even talking about it. We're just, he didn't finish Nate Diaz, but whatever. But because Nate had those two extra rounds, he clips him. Everyone's talking about that. How is that fair to the division when you have Wonderboy and Burns only 3 rounds? That should be 5 rounds. That should absolutely be 5 rounds. And I think as well, like, it's, I don't think we're going to see a finish on Saturday. I think it is going to go the distance with it only being 3 rounds. Like Thompson's, I mean, he's had a couple early finish. I remember he finished Hendricks in the first round. He finished Jake Ellenberger, but Burns is a pretty durable guy. And even for Usman, it took him a couple rounds to finish him. So I don't think we're going to see a finish there, but I think that's the only way Wonderboy gets the shot is if he gets a finish. So it's like a really, Wonderboy's not only got to win the fight, but he's got to win impressively. Otherwise the chance of him fighting for a title again ever is probably very slim. So I don't know. I feel for him as well. By the way, quickly wanted to mention here, producer Michael, always doing magic behind the scenes here. He says that crypto.com is based out of Hong Kong, and Venom was founded in Paris, but has headquarters in Hong Kong. So there's a little bit of a connection there in terms of the deal with Venom, sort of Venom being cool with the whole crypto thing as well.
I'm about to move to Hong Kong.
Yeah, there you go. I've never been. I want to go to Asia so badly. I told you my wife's half Chinese, so we want to
of course,
do that at some point once things lighten up. Jose Flores, have you known about any fighter that has had problems with Mick Maynard? No, that's actually surprising. I've not talked to a single fight. I mean, I have plenty of fighters that didn't like Joe Silva and Sean Shelby, but
that was after the fact, right?
Like, true, but Sean Shelby still, I'm hearing stories about. Stuff.
Of course, Sean Shelby, of course, because he's
got to
been
be a little ruthless
there the longest. You know what I mean? Like, and he's continued to be there. Of course, he's gonna have problems. But Mick Maynard, I think he deals mainly with the women and the heavyweights, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
it. So I don't think it's gonna be too many problems. But who knows, man? We might not know some stories, man, about him. Who knows? You know what I mean? But he seems like he has a good relationship with a lot of people, though.
Jose Flores, I love that Jake Paul makes people pissed off and keeps jabbing at Dana, low-key rooting for him to win in August. You know what? I kind of do as well. I mean, I don't know if I want him to win in August, but I do like the jabs because he's 100% right. Like, he's right about the fighter pay. He's right about a lot of things. And as much as you might think the kid's a little, I shouldn't call him a kid. He's not that much, he's 10 years younger than me, but he's right though. And he's a guy that's, sort of paved the way for, future, YouTube people and trying to make a living and stuff. So yeah, I like it too. I think it's funny because Dana can't say anything really because Jake Paul's 100% right. They should be paid more. So I'm with him there. Antoine says, what main event could you guys see for UFC 267? It's rumored to be in Abu Dhabi in October.
I heard that the Jan Blachowicz fight was going to be in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island. I heard that October is the Abu Dhabi Fight Island month. So 267? What? I don't even know. I didn't even think about, like, how far is that out?
It's October, so it's a bit of a ways. It might end up being Jan and Glover, but
it does say unofficially that it is Jan versus Glover.
There you go. That's probably what it's going to be. So
unofficially. So yeah, but man, why are they waiting so long? Why are they pushing it back? Maybe it's because of Jan being in Europe, like he's from Europe and that the time or whatever. I don't know, but
no, because I asked him and he said he still didn't know the date. Like, I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago and he seemed like, I don't know what's going on with the date. I wonder if I do wonder if they're trying to put this Usman fight together and maybe that's delaying things a little bit. And then you got Ngannou in them. Like, I don't know. There's all types of weird stuff going on at the top as well. J-Spec Driver, Barberena versus Witt. My eyes on that one. Thoughts and picks. I like Barberena in that fight. I love Jason Witt. Great guy. Interesting thing when I spoke to him, I think I tweeted this out, was that he went to the PI. Apparently, he had the highest stress levels out of like any fighter, and I don't know what that's caused by. I know he runs his own business on top of fighting and all this stuff, so he's really had to scale things back. I think Jason will look a lot better than he did in the Semmelsberger fight, but I like Bam Bam in that one. I think
how do they even measure that? Like, that's very interesting.
I don't know. They've got all types of technology out there. I want to get one of those rings that the fighters get, by the way.
Yeah, I want to get one of those too.
I have my watch. It's a Samsung watch. It does measure my sleep and tells me, like, if I've got a good sleep or not. I got a bad sleep last night, by the way. My kid had a bad dream, came in, kept kicking me in the middle of the night, had to put him back in his bed. And then Cat comes in, the whole thing was a disaster. So that's why I got my cold coffee here this morning. But yeah, I don't know. They've really
Barberena, like, he had a life-threatening
injury as well. Yeah, he had to get some serious surgery.
Yeah, I talked to him about it, man. He, like, if he would have zigged when he zagged, man, he might not even be here anymore. Like, it was that close. Like, it's some serious stuff. So he's coming back from some major surgery. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with him.
Jose Flores, Jan and Glover is booked October 30th. There we go. According to Big Marcel. Shout out to Big Marcel, who I saw. Did he finally got verified? Did he not? Or is he still trying to? Here, let me just check. I know a lot of people got verified like this week. Hey, did you try getting verified? Oh no, he's not verified. What the heck? He's got more followers than I do. He should get verified.
I don't know what the criteria of getting verified is. Like,
you just got to go. Have you tried submitting?
Yeah, I've tried.
And no dice. Did you try going under South China Morning Post? I'm sure they would let you under that.
I've done it all. Like, they don't
get this guy verified. Come on. There's some people. I saw some people who have like less than 1,000 followers get verified. It's like, what the heck?
I don't
There you
know
go.
how you get verified, but I'm not really worried about it, man. Like
It
verified
helps.
doesn't
It helps.
change anything for me. I don't know.
Trust me. I'll tell you, and not to go on a rant here, as Dennis Miller used to say. No, it helps. Trust me. People put stock into that stuff if you're verified. They think it's like you're like a celebrity. And I can tell you right now, I've gotten jobs because of my Twitter following and my verification. And I don't think it matters because, like, I got 15,000 followers. You would think my interviews would do at least over 1,000 views every single one. I posted an interview yesterday that did 10 views. It was a prospect, but still, like, come on. Like, so it just goes to show that not a lot of that stuff matters a lot. I know some people put stock into it, but it doesn't matter a ton. But saying all that, counter argument, what I just said, get verified. And that stuff does help when it comes to, like, just a lot of things in this industry. So,
Well, like people get verified and I'm happy for them. And I try to get
You'll get
verified. They didn't verify me. I move on with my life. I'm not
No,
dwelling
try
on
again. Trust me. We got to
I'm not
make
even
this
worried
happen.
about it. I got more things to worry about than getting verified, to be honest with you.
All right.
So
I'm just telling you, it would definitely help you out.
of course.
Jose Flores, thoughts on Santos versus Walker? Interesting fight for both guys. I actually like this fight a lot because Santos has got to get it together, man. I remember picking him against Rakic. He looked bad in that one. Age is catching up to him. He's in love. There's all types of stuff going on with him, but he needs to get it together. And I honestly think Walker his stock has taken a huge dive since losing to Krylov. I know he beat Ryan Spann, but that was a fight that could have gone either way. Spann hit him with a really good shot, and he nearly knocked him out as well. So that was like a killer be killed fight. Just so happened that he was the one who got killed in that one. But
coming back from a big surgery too, right? And Santos had surgery on both his knees. His last fight was his first fight since then. Didn't do very good. Santos looks like he's on a downward spiral, man. I hate to say that because I like Santos, man. He's a great fighter and he's an exciting fighter. So is Walker, but I don't know, man. This fight, it might not play out like people think. I think it might play out to where it's like a Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou type fight where both guys are just too tentative, and it might not be that exciting. But I hope not. But I don't even want either guy to get knocked out either, man. It's just like, man, it sucks because both guys, if let's say Santos loses, where does he go from there, man? Like, I don't even think he's in the UFC anymore.
Who is that? Sorry,
Santos.
Thiago Santos.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still. No,
I'm saying like if he loses against Walker.
Is he going to be at the UFC? Sorry, I was reading the questions and I totally got. He probably gets cut with his age. I think. Yeah, maybe he gets one more.
So it sucks.
Like Dominic Reyes isn't going to get cut, right?
Nah.
So if he loses 3, maybe they give him one more. It's not a totally a slam dunk there. Okay, let's keep going with the questions here. Try and go a little bit faster. What else do we got? Sorry, lost track here. Good to hear from you. Roman, by the way, says, who do you guys have in Gustafsson and Craig? I got to go Paul Craig right now. Gustafsson, I thought the whole reason that he was coming back was because he didn't have to cut weight to go to light heavyweight. Now he's back at that. I got to go Paul Craig. That guy looks awesome. And he's got a great ground game. Gustafsson has been submitted a number of times, so I could see it happening here.
Well, he was submitted in his last fight against Verdum, right? So, and Gustafsson, I don't know, man. Where's his head at? Like
I'd love to know his manager. I for some reason he's got the same manager as Ryan Hall and Mousasi. It seems like every time I try and reach out for an interview, he's always unavailable, not doing media or whatever. So hopefully I can get him this time. But I'm going to keep trying, John. That's you got to pester these managers until they finally break through. But hopefully get something with him. And I want to know what's going on with Chimaev as well. He could give us some good insight because they train together, right? So.
Yeah, that's right. Chimaev, man.
Oh, by the way, quick segue because it just reminded me. So Neil Magny says he has a fight August 28th. I don't know who against. And Chimaev says he's coming back in October. So they're not fighting each other, obviously. Who do you think Magny's fighting?
Man, I think Magny's probably going to end up fighting Bilal Muhammad.
See, that was the name that came to mind as well. Bilal just did an interview yesterday with TMZ, very predictably saying he wants to fight Leon Edwards, which is like, he's got like, I don't know if that's, I know it's his management trying to like push for that, but like, get off that, man. You're not going to get the fight. Like he's not going to get it. Like no, Leon's not going to fight. Bilal's ranked number 9. Like Leon, there's so many anyways, I just think that.
But I think Bilal should continue doing what he's doing though.
But to me, it's a wasted call out. Like if you're going to call, you might as well just call out Usman then.
Yeah, I'm saying like continue doing what you're doing. You could switch to another opponent. Just continue doing what you're doing because I feel like it's building little bit like
But
momentum.
I think
for him.
I think people are turning on him though now in a sense because people are
Really?
like, "Hey, dude," well, the Leon thing, yeah, because people, unless they're like hard like fans of Bilal's show and all that, they're like, "Oh yeah, we need to see that fight." But you look at the replies yesterday from him doing that interview. A lot of people are like, "Dude, like move on." Like you had like if they were going to do the rematch, they would have done it right after the eye poke. They didn't do it. You only got the fight because Chimaev was out, and I say this as a big Bilal fan. I like him. I think he's a great guy, but like, let's be a little realistic here. I think, you know what might end up happening with Magny? I'll throw a fight out to you. Maybe they do the rematch with Damian Maia.
Damian Maia's going to fight again?
He might. I don't know, because I'm looking at the rankings here. Like, who the heck is Magny going to fight? He already fought Jiling Lee. Does he maybe rematches Ponzinibbio? Doubt that. Sean Brady's fighting Kevin Lee. Muslim Sakalov, maybe he's fighting him. I don't know, but everyone else is booked, right?
Yeah,
Except, and he's not fighting Masvidal, obviously.
I think Bilal should fight Chimaev. I think that should be the fight. If he can't
same
get
management.
Edwards,
actually not anymore. I guess doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're not. So I think if he can't get the Leon fight, he might as well get the guy that was gonna fight Leon, which is Chimaev. But that's a bad matchup for Mohammed, though. Real bad.
We missed Jose Flores' question. Thoughts on the Dustin sparring video? It was stupid. Ooh. You know, you guys know me. A lot of stuff I like when it comes to Colby, and I'll say the stuff I don't like. This was dumb. It wasted everyone's time. It was nothing. It just looked like a regular sparring video. Colby's just doing it to A, get himself attention, and B, try and get stuff off. Take some shine away from Dustin with it being his fight week.
Man, it's becoming desperate. Like, this is my view.
That stuff's a bit desperate, but I think most of his stuff's pretty good, personally. But
well, he's a character, right? Like he comes on, does the interviews, he's corny, he says corny things, and he attacks people, right? But releasing this video, I don't know. Like, to me, when you release video or footage of another fighter in training camp sparring, I think that's completely disrespectful, man.
I agree.
Like, why would you do that? Like, why would you put that out there? That's not for you to do. You know what I mean? Like,
but
that's another.
We're talking about Colby here. That's on brand for him. He's got to be the villain, John. It's no different than him not giving Usman credit for beating him, or him leaving the arena, not doing post-fight stuff after he lost to Usman. Like, that's part of his brand. He's got to be the villain. He's running with it, and that's what you have to do. Like, if Colby was to show any sort of respect at this point to anyone, he'd lose his brand. That's the brand he's running with, unfortunately.
Man, it seems like all the cast-offs from my American Top Team are going to MMA Masters. Did you see that story on Agapova?
Yeah.
I
forgot about her, by the way. It was like, remember she did an interview on ESPN, and they're like, she was this huge favorite, and Shauna Dobson, love her. Spoiled that party. That I love seeing that, because there's nothing that annoys me more than someone that like gets overhyped after like a fight or two, because she had like one win, I think, and then they were like, oh, she's better watch out, Valentina, or whoever it was, and then of course she loses. So yeah, but apparently from that story, she had some drug issues. Like that's really unfortunate to hear. So.
Yeah, and she's young too, man. Like, and I remember I interviewed her ahead of her debut, and I remember her telling me that she was like, when she was in Kazakhstan, I think that's her. Like,
she's from there.
Yeah, it's like people were trying to take advantage of her. You know what I mean? Like, like coaches and stuff like that, and that's why she went to American Top Team. But now, I guess America is too wild for her. You know what I mean? Like, it's too open, it's too free.
Well, Florida especially, crazy. there's a lot of stuff floating around there. Okay, before we can forget, we got to do our underdog picks. I do want to get this one more question here, because I do want to tie this into some stuff. My favorite username on here, unacceptable chat tree. By the way, chat tree is not tweeted since like May. Did you notice that?
Well, he's on Facebook. Like, he's active on Facebook.
Yeah, it's just weird that you're not using Twitter either. But anyways, he says, when are we? Oh no, sorry, it's the question before that. He says, when are we going to see Conor in any of the fight week videos? Fight week videos doesn't feel like a Conor fight week. I've seen a bit of stuff, but I'll be honest here, this has got to be the lowest interest like that I've felt for Conor. Like, me personally, I'm excited for the fight. We're going to be doing our watch along, by the way, on Saturday. But I have never seen numbers like this with Conor McGregor content so low in forever.
I haven't even probably noticed. What's
I do the pros picks, right? So I can kind of gauge them, and they're doing okay, but not for a typical Conor fight week. Like, I feel like outside of him doing the voicemail thing and the thing with Poirier's wife and all that, like, it's just been really like just not that much buzz at all. And it's not even like we came off a week that there was like a bunch of big news last week, and we had a break last week. And so you think that would lead even more into this, but I'm not feeling it being like a typical Conor McGregor fight week. I know we're still in a pandemic, but I don't know, John, are you getting that sense? Like, it doesn't feel like there's much going on. I think because Conor's coming off a loss.
I don't know. I don't really get that feeling, because I haven't been looking at the numbers. You know better than me, because you're putting out content on Conor. I gotta go back and look at the embedded. You know what I mean? What are the numbers on the embeddeds? But Dana White always comes out every Conor pay-per-view week and says this is trending to become the biggest pay-per-view in promotional history. Pre-orders are at the highest it's ever been, and I don't know if you could believe that, but I don't
think
know,
we'll
man.
see that this week.
I think Conor, this is a huge fight for him. I think this is like a crossroads fight for him. If he loses this fight, where does he go?
Well, we know where he's going to go. Nate Diaz fight. I think he can fight Masvidal. There's plenty of fights for Conor. Just he'll be like Chael Sonnen going forward, where it's like, okay, you're obviously not at the top of your game at this point, so we're going to give you fun fights that people will still watch, and then and then it'll be. I'm predicting this: if Conor loses on Saturday, he maybe fights Diaz, whatever. He runs out his contract, and then Conor McGregor promotions, and he does the boxing model going forward, and he fights whoever he wants, and people will tune in and they can say whatever they want, or maybe he goes into management. I don't know, but I think Conor is going to be fine because his brand is so strong. But yeah, it's a lot on the line here this Saturday.
I think he loses a lot of luster and he takes a big hit in popularity if he loses.
He will, but the popularity is still more than most UFC fighters, and people will still follow him. It's no different than Ronda. Like Ronda's still, whenever you hear something pop up about her, people are covering it, right? So I think it's no different than that. But we'll see. Yeah, a lot on the line here on Saturday as well. Let's get to our underdog picks because I don't want to forget to do that, and then we'll continue with the rest of the questions. We'll go a little bit later because we started a little bit later here as well. I had a couple underdogs I liked on this card. One of them in particular. Well, I'll tell you one I do like, but this isn't going to be my official pick. I do like Greg Hardy over Tuivasa. I think we talked about this a while back, but the one I actually like is Omari Akhmedov and Brad Tavares. Omari Akhmedov's the underdog. I don't get that at all. Akhmedov, like Akhmedov is. Hey, you picked him as well. How is Brad Tavares the favorite here? Older guy. Actually, they might even be close to the same age. Let me double check that for a second. But I know that. Yeah, they're both 33. But the thing with Tavares is a lot of injuries, a lot of layoffs. I mean, Edmund Shabazian, remember that win that he had? Yeah, he's taken a ton of damage over his career. Granted, he's losing to a lot of good guys as well, but Akhmedov, he didn't look that bad in the Weidman fight. In fact, I think had he kept it standing, he might have won that fight. He's got to win over Ian Heinisch. I think you can't count out Akhmedov in this one. And I think if he's able to just sort of put Tavares against the cage and just, grind him out a little bit or, even keep it standing, I think maybe he has an edge there. But I like Akhmedov in this one, and I definitely think there's value in him at plus 145. Your thoughts on that fight? Obviously, you picked him too. So
yeah, of course. I think this is an underdog pick that a lot of people are going to take. I think people in Vegas are going to take this fight, and they're going to pick Akhmedov. You know what I mean? Brad, man, he gets into these fights where it's just like he's going blow for blow, and then he kind of gets lost in just trading, and he ends up getting beat. You know what I mean? Sometimes he'll come through, but I don't think so in this fight. I think Akhmedov is just a little bit better than him, and at the point of their careers, this is an interesting one, man. I don't understand why he would be the favorite.
I'll just throw out a couple other underdog ones, and I'll get your thoughts as well. Another underdog I liked on here as well was I mentioned Greg Hardy. I'm almost tempted to just say Montinho, because Sean O'Malley's probably gonna win by knockout. Actually, I'll take that back. What was the other fight? Oh, I like Nico Price over Pereira as well. I think Price, he's I know he's a little wild and tends to be a little unpredictable, but he's also a guy that I think fights a little bit smarter than Pereira at times. Pereira's a guy that clearly doesn't I don't know. Pereira's had some ups and downs. I know he's coming off the win over Chaos Williams, but I think Price is a guy that could potentially upset as well. And also want to mention producer Michael, who's the best in the business, literally my favorite producer. Says 68% of the users are picking Akhmedov. So that's interesting. So even though Tavares is the favorite, like we mentioned, a lot of people picking Akhmedov as well. So a lot of people are on our side on top of that. But anyways, I've talked way too much. Who's your underdog pick this week?
I gotta go with Ryan Hall, man. Until Ryan Hall loses, I'm gonna keep picking him. I think he's on a good streak, and even though he's been out for a long time, I think he's been training and he's been sharpening his tools. He's been training a lot with Corey Sandhagen, Ton Lee, both great strikers, and
Wonderboy Thompson training with
Wonderboy Thompson too. So I feel like if Tabora he goes in there and gets too cocky and goes to the ground with them, it's gonna be night, man. I think just Ryan Hall is just he's just a specialist, man, and you go into their world, he's going to take you out. I think Ryan Hall is going to be able to get it to the ground. And Ryan Hall, he's not afraid to pull guard, dive for the legs, and I think that's going to be really dangerous for Tabora. I know a lot of people are high on Tabora. You know, there's a big like contingent of fans that love the Georgian fighters, and you know they're great and everything, but I think Ryan Hall is just too experienced and just too well skilled on the ground to lose this fight.
I brought that up to Corey yesterday in my interview. By the way, if you haven't checked it out, Low Kick MMA did a great interview with Corey Sandhagen. And by the way, shout out to Corey, one of the easiest fighters to set up interviews with, and just such a nice guy and always takes a lot of time. Awesome interview with him yesterday. But I brought up the fact that Hall is an underdog. He's like, oh man, like, I don't know what people are thinking. He's like, Ryan's great. Like, he's so like the fact that Corey, who's a very cerebral, high IQ fighter, goes and picks the brain of a Ryan Hall, I think tells you everything you need to know about Hall's IQ. And you're right. This does look like a situation where, I mean, I did pick Poirier, but the odds are a bit off. It should be closer to a pick 'em. And I think the only reason is Poirier is just so much younger. Almost, I was supposed to interview Poirier, didn't end up working out. But you're right, the Georgian fans, which, by the way, might as well segue to this real quick. Giga Chikadze and Edson Barbosa are fighting. A lot of people already saying that Giga Chikadze is going to win that fight. I don't know, man. I like Barbosa in that one. Yeah, because, well, it's part of the fan base. And also people are so, like, I had someone write on the video being like, oh, Giga's legit. He'll knock out Barbosa in the first round. First off, two wrong statements there. Number one, I don't think he's going to knock out Barbosa in the first round. Barbosa's fought the who's who, and even when he has been finished, it's been later. And two, he's legit because he beat Cub Swanson, one ranked fighter. This goes back to the whole Islam Makhachev thing where it's like, just because you beat one ranked guy does not mean you're all of a sudden a title contender. Like, we got to see a little bit more here. So I think this is another case of where the fan base is really overhyping a guy. I mean, like I said, I'm picking Poirier to win, but in the Chikadze fight, I like Edson all day. He's still competing at a high level. He finished Shane Burgos. Like, you know how hard that is to finish Shane Burgos? You know how hard it is to, go, a 3-round fight with Dan Ige and, live to tell about it? Like, this guy's very good. And Giga Chikadze has fought no one near, like Edson would destroy Cub Swanson. I have no doubt about that. So I think people got to pump the brakes a little bit, but
he's got to prove himself. And then I think this is the fight that he's going to be able to prove himself. If he goes in there and he finishes,
if he wins though, high risk, high reward. It's actually kind of a low risk, high reward, because if he loses, big deal. He goes back to live another day.
Exactly.
But if he wins this fight, they're going to propel him up the rocket ship. And then also look who his manager is. It's all sort of lining up to be that way as well, as we usually do. We have just a few more minutes here for questions. We'll kind of get to it as well. Let's see what we have here. I know Jose was asking me about some Sean Shelby stories. I'll mention that maybe on the parting shot today. That's more of where I can talk about that stuff. Tuivasa and Hardy, odds of a KO finish. I think pretty good. I like Hardy though. I think Hardy's being overlooked a little bit in this fight.
I like Tuivasa in that fight. Hardy, I think he left American Top Team.
He did. He's working with Rashad Evans now in Florida. A little like mini camp over there.
Rashad Evans minicamp? Okay, so
yeah,
that's interesting. Oh, Din Thomas, right?
Din Thomas.
Okay, yeah. So like Jillian Robinson. I just interviewed Miranda Maverick, and she actually has, I think Din Thomas and Jillian Robinson Jillian Robinson and Din Thomas is up there training with Miranda Maverick for the Macy Barber fight. So
no, I also know right now. I don't know how long ago you interviewed her, but Miranda's actually. Oh, you did? Okay, she's in Vegas though, is she not right now?
No, she's back in.
Okay, because she was in Vegas with Jim West, who I do the podcast with MMA Gold. So she's doing a lot of different training, which I think is great as well. So.
I haven't released the interview yet, but I just talked to her less than 12 hours ago, and she's back on the East Coast. And I talked to her about the training that she did with Aspen Ladd and Andrea Lee. And her scoping out like the PI and seeing Jessica Andrade's training and all of that stuff. So that should be out soon on SCMP MMA. So go check it out.
Looking forward to that one. Also, man, how good is that fight with Aspen Ladd and Macy Chasson? I love that fight. That's one I wish we could break down here. There's too many fights to break down over the coming weeks, but that's going to be just a banger because Aspen, I don't know if you've seen the footage and stuff of her training. Like, she's looking unreal. And Macy, I've been so high on Macy since she was on The Ultimate Fighter. She's really good as well. She had some health issues that sort of played into some of her losses, but she's looked outstanding as well.
Of course.
Let's take one more question here. We'll go with Justin here in the chat. Sorry if we missed your question, just post it in the comments or hit us up on social media. Justin said, did you guys see Ali saying Usman will wait to fight the winner of Luque and Chiesa now? No, I didn't see that because I try not to watch a lot of the stuff because it's just nonsense. Like the whole thing with Nate Diaz, Nate Diaz showed us something. Like, dude, like just say what it really is. Usman wants a payday against an easier opponent, so he wants to fight Nate Diaz. Just say that. Don't say that he's shown more. because he's lost 2 fights in a row. And what did he show in the Masvidal fight? He showed that he got the brakes beat off of him, so to speak. So yeah, if that happens, like, I mean, come on, there's just too many contenders at the top that I love. Luque and Chiesa. I think they're going to be right on the doorstep if the winner of that fight, but there's guys ahead of them and they should be rewarded for that. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, well, Ali, he's also a manager and a promoter, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to promote his guys and give them the opportunity to make the most money by taking the least amount of damage, right? And Nate Diaz is that opportunity, right? The biggest name, the most money, and the easier fight. So I see why he's doing it, but and who knows who's going to fight him next? I mean, there's so much negotiation going on right now. I think the UFC scrambling so hard, and that's why we saw Derek Lewis and Cyril Gahn get put together, because they're scrambling, man. They don't know what they're going to do, because all these fighters, they're turning down fight. Look at France. France is like, hey, I'm not gonna follow your word. I'm not gonna be your slave. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can't just control me like that. I'm the champ, and I'm glad Francis is standing up, dude. I'm glad he is. Like, this
and
is
Markel,
good.
shout out to his manager, Markel, who, by the way, was on The Bachelor. I don't know if you ever knew that. Probably didn't, because that's like North American pop culture knowledge or whatever. But yeah, Markel Martin had a CAA combat division, was on The Bachelor, believe it or not. Anyways, good time to wrap things up. I don't know why I mentioned that, but there you go. Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I'm going to get my picks in later today. I literally just wrote that on my phone. I won't miss it out on that. What else do we got? Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Check out my interview with Corey Sandhagen I put out yesterday, and check out the Parting Shot podcast later today. If you're on my Patreon for less than a cup of coffee, you can subscribe for an entire month and you get the uncensored Parting Shot podcast. This is where we talk about not only fights, but behind the scenes stuff, a lot of stuff I can't really talk about publicly, but and we answer your questions. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you guys want to know about the inner workings of the media industry. More than happy to discuss that as well. 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific time. John, what do you got going on this week? You mentioned Miranda Maverick. What other interviews do you have in the bank, as they say?
Well, I got an interview with Rafael Fiziev. He's one of the funniest guys.
Yeah, great interview, by the way. Love that. That's great.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and nobody wants to fight him because he's an animal. And I just released the interview with Elise Reed. She's gonna step in on
making her debut
against Sajara Eubanks. She's a really interesting story. You know what I mean? A soldier, and she's only 4-0, man, and she's stepping against Sajara Eubanks. Big task, but who knows what's going to happen in that fight. Just check out all my interviews from UFC 264 coming up this weekend. I got a couple. I got Gilbert Burns, and who else? I got Jerome Rivera and Dricus Duplessis, and who else? And that's about it. I know you got a bunch too. Don't you got a bunch?
Yeah. I'll read off the list here real quick as we're wrapping things up. Stephen Thompson, Max Griffin, Nico Price, and Jerome Rivera as well. But make sure you watch John's interview first, and then you can compare who did a better job. But I got a bunch of pros picks videos. I got 10 parts of McGregor Poirier. That's sort of where I was getting the stats from. Also got 5 parts of Thompson and Burns, and did a full card preview with my picks with timestamps included as well. And more importantly, make sure you tune in Saturday night on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/LynchOnSports. John and I will be doing a full hangout live stream. People say watch party. I like hangout stream. Sounds a little bit different. Everyone's using watch party or, fight companion like Rogan always says and stuff. But yeah, if you're watching the fights on Saturday, be sure to join us. We'll be answering questions and reacting to the fights as well. I just ordered the pay-per-view today as well, for myself, for John, and for our wonderful producer, Michael in the back, who does a phenomenal job. We will see you next week, same time, same channel, previewing another upcoming notable fight. Make sure you download that app. Like I mentioned, Fantasy Fanatics MMA. Doesn't matter if you're on an iPhone or Android. They got it on both. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the fights this weekend.